Government.
A government is the system by which a state or community is governed. In Commonwealth English, a government more narrowly refers to the particular executive in control of a state at a given time, known in American English as an administration. In American English, government refers to the larger system by which any state is organized. Furthermore, government is occasionally used in English as a synonym for governance. In the case of its broad associative definition, government normally consists of legislators, administrators, and arbitrators. Government is the means by which state policy is enforced, as well as the mechanism for determining the policy of the state. A form of government, or form of state governance, refers to the set of political systems and institutions that make up the organization of a specific government. Government of any kind currently affects every human activity in many important ways. For this reason, political scientists generally argue that government should not be studied by itself, but should be studied along with anthropology, economics, history, philosophy, science, and sociology.
Political science. Etymology.
From Middle English government, from Old French government, French gouvernement, from Latin gubernatio, management, government. Government is a compound formed from the ancient Greek kibernao, I steer, drive, guide, pilot, and the Latin ment, ablative singular of mens, mind. Arch, prefix derived from the Greek archon, rulership, which means higher in hierarchy. The Greek word kratos, power, which means right to lead, is the suffix root in words like aristocrat and democracy. Its mythological personification was the god Kratos, a son of Styx.
Classifying government.
In political science, it has long been a goal to create a typology or taxonomy of polities, as typologies of political systems are not obvious. It is especially important in the political science fields of comparative politics and international relations. On the surface, identifying a form of government appears to be easy, as all governments have an official form. The United States is a federal republic, while the former Soviet Union was a socialist republic. However, self-identification is not objective, and as Kopstein and Lichbach argue, defining regimes can be tricky. For example, elections are a defining characteristic of a democracy, but in practice elections in the former Soviet Union were not free and fair, and took place in a single-party state. Thus in many practical classifications it would not be considered democratic. Identifying a form of government is also complicated because a large number of political systems originate as socio-economic movements and are then carried into governments by specific parties naming themselves after those movements. All with competing political ideologies. Experience with those movements in power, and the strong ties they may have to particular forms of government, can cause them to be considered as forms of government in themselves. Other complications include general non-consensus or deliberate distortion or bias of reasonable technical definitions to political ideologies and associated forms of governing, due to the nature of politics in the modern era. For example, the meaning of conservatism in the United States has little in common with the way the word's definition is used elsewhere. As Rebuffo, 2011, notes, what Americans now call conservatism much of the world calls liberalism or neoliberalism. Since the 1950s, conservatism in the United States has been chiefly associated with the Republican Party. However, during the era of segregation many Southern Democrats were conservatives, and they played a key role in the conservative coalition that controlled Congress from 1937 to 1963. Every country in the world is ruled by a system of governance that combines at least two, or more, of the following attributes. For example, the United States is not a true capitalist society, since the government actually provides social services for its citizens. Additionally, one person's opinion of the type of government may differ from another's. For example, some may argue that the United States is a plutocracy rather than a democracy since they may believe it is ruled by the wealthy. There are always shades of gray in any government. Even the most liberal democracies limit rival political activity to one extent or another, and even the most tyrannical dictatorships must organize a broad base of support, so it is very difficult pigeonholing every government into narrow categories.
The dialectical forms of government.
The classical Greek philosopher Plato discusses 5 types of regimes. They are aristocracy, democracy, oligarchy, democracy and tyranny. Plato also assigns a man to each of these regimes to illustrate what they stand for. The tyrannical man would represent tyranny, for example. These 5 regimes progressively degenerate, starting with aristocracy at the top and tyranny at the bottom. In Republic, while Plato spends much time having Socrates narrate a conversation about the city he founds with Glaucon and Adeimantus in speech, the discussion eventually turns to considering 4 regimes that exist in reality and tend to degrade successively into each other: democracy, oligarchy, also called plutocracy, democracy and tyranny, also called despotism.
Forms of government by associated attributes.
Descriptions of governments can be based on the following attributes.
By elements of where decision-making power is held. Aristarchic attributes.
Governments with aristocracy attributes are traditionally controlled and organized by a small group of the most qualified people, with no intervention from the most part of society. This small group usually shares some common trait. The opposite of an aristarchic government is kakistocracy.
Autocratic attributes.
Governments with autocratic attributes are dominated by one person who has all the power over the people in a country. The Roman Republic made dictators to lead during times of war. The Roman dictators only held power for a small time. In modern times, an autocrat's rule is not stopped by any rules of law, constitutions, or other social and political institutions. After World War II, many governments in Latin America, Asia, and Africa were ruled by autocratic governments. Examples of autocrats include Idi Amin, Muammar Gaddafi, Adolf Hitler and Gamal Abdel Nasser.
Monarchic attributes.
Governments with monarchic attributes are ruled by a king-emperor or a queen-empress who usually holds their position for life. There are 2 types of monarchies: absolute monarchies and constitutional monarchies. In an absolute monarchy, the ruler has no limits on their wishes or powers. In a constitutional monarchy, a ruler's powers are limited by a document called a constitution. The constitution was put in place to put a check to these powers.
Pejorative attributes.
Regardless of the form of government, the actual governance may be influenced by sectors with political power which are not part of the formal government. Certain actions of the governors, such as corruption, demagoguery, or fearmongering, may disrupt the intended way of working of the government if they are widespread enough.
By elements of who elects the empowered. Democratic attributes.
Governments with democratic attributes are most common in the Western world and in some countries of the East that have been influenced by Western society, often by being colonized by Western powers over the course of history. In democracies, large proportions of the population may vote either to make decisions or to choose representatives to make decisions. Commonly significant in democracies are political parties, which are groups of people with similar ideas about how a country or region should be governed. Different political parties have different ideas about how the government should handle different problems.
Oligarchic attributes.
Governments with oligarchic attributes are ruled by a small group of segregated, powerful and/or influential people, who usually share similar interests and/or family relations. These people may spread power and elect candidates equally or not equally. An oligarchy is different from a true democracy because very few people are given the chance to change things. An oligarchy does not have to be hereditary or monarchic. An oligarchy does not have one clear ruler, but several rulers. Some historical examples of oligarchy are the former Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Some critics of representative democracy think of the United States as an oligarchy. The Athenian democracy used sortition to elect candidates, almost always male, white, Greek, educated citizens holding a minimum of land, wealth and status.
Other attributes. By elements of how power distribution is structured. Republican attributes.
A republic is a form of government in which the country is considered a public matter, Latin, res publica, not the private concern or property of the rulers, and where officers of states are subsequently directly or indirectly elected or appointed rather than inherited.
Federalism attributes.
Federalism is a political concept in which a group of members are bound together by covenant, Latin, fidus, covenant, with a governing representative head. The term federalism is also used to describe a system of government in which sovereignty is constitutionally divided between a central governing authority and constituent political units, such as states or provinces. Federalism is a system based upon democratic rules and institutions in which the power to govern is shared between national and provincial state governments, creating what is often called a federation. Proponents are often called federalists.
Other power structure attributes. Forms of government by other characteristic attributes. By socio-economic system attributes.
Historically, most political systems originated as socio-economic ideologies. Experience with those movements in power, and the strong ties they may have to particular forms of government, can cause them to be considered as forms of government in themselves.
By significant constitutional attributes.
Certain major characteristics are defining of certain types. Others are historically associated with certain types of government. Rule according to higher law, unwritten ethical principles, versus written constitutionalism, separation of church and state versus state religion, civilian control of the military versus stratocracy, totalitarianism authoritarianism versus libertarianism. Police state, majority rule or parliamentary sovereignty versus constitutional Bill of Rights with separation of powers and supermajority rules to prevent tyranny of the majority and protect minority rights, androcracy, patriarchy, or gynarchy, matriarchy, gender quotas, gender equality provision, or silence on the matter.
By approach to regional autonomy.
This list focuses on differing approaches that political systems take to the distribution of sovereignty, and the autonomy of regions within the state. Sovereignty located exclusively at the center of political jurisdiction. Empire, unitary state, empire, unitary state, sovereignty located at the center and in peripheral areas. Hegemony, federation and federal republic, confederation, federal monarchy, hegemony, federation and federal republic, confederation, federal monarchy, diverging degrees of sovereignty. Asymmetrical federalism, federacy, associated state, protectorate, colonial dependency, thalassocracy, league, commonwealth, decentralization and devolution, powers redistributed from central to regional or local governments, asymmetrical federalism, federacy, associated state, protectorate, colonial dependency, thalassocracy, league, commonwealth, decentralization and devolution, powers redistributed from central to regional or local governments.
Theoretical and speculative attributes.
These currently have no citable real-world examples outside of fiction.
Maps.
Central government, civics, comparative government, constitutional economics, legal rights, list of countries by system of government, list of European Union member states by political system, ministry, political economy, politics, state, polity, voting system, world government.